twice the romance due.
From 2013 until, well, essentially the present, the British ancient Roman-based sitcom Plebs.
Is a dump.
The only way is up.
Oh, that's grim. And that's my limit.
So in Plebs, the young Marcus with his best friend Stylax and his slave Grumio arrive in Rome to build a life in the big city. Country boys or small town boys move to the big city looking to make a name for themselves, make their fortune or whatever. The age-old story of coming of age, leaving home, going off on your own, trying to make it in the Big Apple or whatever, except that it happens to be set in ancient Rome. So having re-binged it here recently, I can say this. The first 2 seasons of Plebs is some of the funniest television I've ever seen. Now, granted, warning, it's adult, and so there's a lot more profane stuff and sexuality in it than is actually necessary. It is British, so it's even worse than what we're used to in the States, and there's quite a bit of toilet humor that's kind of nasty. I mean, literally wiggling through sewage pipes and what. We get to see the Roman latrines, the public baths, the toilets, and all of the actual disgustingness of it and the realism thereof. That being said, it is so funny. It is so well done. Marcus, Stylax, and Grumio, they find a place. They rent a place from a landlord, and we have landlord as a character. They get a job working in an office, a grain business, and essentially they are office machines. Marcus becomes a copier. He makes copies of things. Obviously, Stylax becomes the shredder. His job is to literally tear things up that need to be destroyed. And there's even a water cooler around which there's conversation, except it's a person, the water boy, who stands there holding a jug, reminding everyone that he prefers to be called Waterman. The whole thing works out pretty amusingly. The next door neighbor, newly arrived from Britain, her dream is to become an actress. She has her own slave, Metella, who's sort of a snarky redhead who is suspicious of Marcus's interest in her master/friend. And the whole thing kind of works out kind of nice. It really does a good job of being very funny. After 2 seasons of which, though, they mix up the formula, Metella and Cynthia leave, and there's kind of a hilarious ending to all of that. But they leave, and then we get a season with a new love interest who is, you've got to wonder the whole time, you're like, this isn't just funny, because why is he even interested in this young woman who's like into threesomes and all of the obscene stuff in Rome, which is what they did, but Marcus seems to think eventually they will fall in love and she'll stop doing this, and it's just one disaster after another. It focused too much on the parts of his character that were obnoxious rather than funny, and brought in new people that weren't as... And you sort of fumble through that season, but by the time you start season 4, full disclosure, I have only watched like 1 episode from season 4 and 5. I just couldn't even do it anymore. Stylax dies unceremoniously, relatively amusingly, but he dies at the beginning of that 4th season. They bring in a new character. They change around the setup again, and it's like they lost their footing. I'm not sure if it was a ratings issue or why it was so difficult that they couldn't continue with that first 2-season formula. Because even the way they wrapped it up showed how much more potential there was still there to explore with those 2 ladies next door. Moving on to another place of employment, you lose they kept the water boy, Aurelius, but then moving on from Flavia and her grain business, just nothing about it felt as good. But I tell you, those first 2 seasons in particular are classic. Those are the sorts of things I could watch over and over again, despite being so naughty. They're really done well. They're very funny. Of course, full disclosure, as a history nerd, they're not doing real history. There's a lot of cool props, and there's a lot of cool references to things that are really historic. But then, like, one episode actually begins, it says 25 BC, but we hear that there's an emperor, so it must be Augustus having what at that time it would have to be. But then they would make reference to pest control plans gone awry, like bringing in cats to deal with the mice and so on, which is Nero, Claudius. These are later emperors. Events like the conquest of Britain, and so the British are coming to some of them are coming to settle in Rome, which is not, despite their claims to great success, the conquest of Britain doesn't happen until quite a bit later. So there is the arena, but you get the idea that it's Colosseum-like. I don't think they actually make the claim it's the Colosseum. Of course, it wouldn't exist until well after 25 BC. So obviously, it's not something you watch for accuracy, although it is surprisingly and hilariously accurate on some of the points. And that kind of really made the humor for me. Going into it, I knew it was not going to be accurate historically, but it had all of those good elements that were modern and yet ancient, and you could find fun in it, and it was hilarious. So I highly recommend the first 2 seasons. Enjoy what you can from it. After that third season is kind of and after that I don't even know. But it was an interesting concept and a fascinating idea, and I was glad I found it on Crackle with some commercials. I had seen it years ago. I had seen a little bit of the beginning of it, and I finally sat down and started binging. Plebs, live it, love it, watch it. Let me know what you think. Salve, citizens.
I'm saying I could bang everyone.
Oh, good for you, Waterboy. Aim high.
Thank you, Waterman.